Good old boys.
Mart.
Bog Beef.
Hellbilly.
Today we are on a special mission.
Talking about the Rural Purge.
I feel like this episode's been like a long time in the making, and we kind of really start to touch on it in the most recent X-Files podcast we recorded. So I'm happy that we have come together today to just really dive into this topic, because Marek and I were kind of talking a little bit before the show, and for something that I personally think is one of the most like impactful cultural pivot points in entertainment, there's absolutely nothing at all really written on it in any sort of like academic serious way.
Which is on purpose.
Oh yeah.
You'll find, and this is something that occasionally gets joked about. I don't know if it's still the case, but like 10 years ago, every now and then you would see like a funny news story that'd be like, the most popular show in Afghanistan or Moldova or Albania is Gunsmoke, and it's been the highest rated primetime TV show for like the past 30 years there, which is funny because that's basically what it was in America. And TV at the height of it, you had I'm just reading from a list here. I'm sure that you guys will know many more. Andy Griffith, Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, Lassie, Petticoat Junction, Hee Haw. Oh, how dare they? It said basically hillbillies, cowboys, and spies.
Well, so I'm going to try to be objective in the first part. And our friend Hellbilly is the real TV guy, but I'll say,
yeah, I'll try to keep this on the rails as long as we can until the hooting and hollering begins.
Now, in the early days of television, there were a lot of westerns for a lot of reasons. They were a popular genre. It was really cheap to make. You could just go to any place with a desert, put on a cowboy hat, and you had a western. So they were really popular. That's not quite the same thing as what was purged in the early 70s. There were these shows that were explicitly about rural small town, usually, maybe not just usually, maybe entirely in the South. And this genre, people have this misconception about the Rural Purge that like, oh, well, in the early days of TV, this is what TV was like, and they just moved on from that. No, the early days of TV were not like this. You did not have Andy Griffith didn't kick things off. Like, I Love Lucy was the biggest TV show in the world in the early days, and Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball were not living in Mayberry.
I did want to, before we get further, so I've read that it could be just coincidence, but westerns died with went at the same time as the Rural Purge. Westerns, I mean, my memory, it's stuff I've read. I don't even really know anything about the Lucille Ball era. I just know that is it like, any cool actor or whatever, you really read and like, oh, where'd they get their start? Oh, well, it was in, Gunsmoke, Bonanza, or, the real stories of the,
Highway Patrol.
No, it was they wasn't called real stories, but the bank company or whatever.
Oh, Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo. There was like, these shows dominated
Death Valley Days, Wyatt Earp,
stuff. I kind of mashed those together. I know a lot of the country artists, like Hank Williams Sr. is like the god of country music, and I don't even know if he was so much watching TV or so much reading like dime books about cowboys or whatever, but Johnny Cash said like he didn't own any horses, but he was just watching the hell out of Gunsmoke and stuff. That's where he got into the cowboy thing.
Yeah, so there were a lot of westerns in the early days of television. There weren't a ton of these kind of shows. These kind of shows were cropping up in the late 50s and early 60s, and that was for a reason. People wanted to watch Andy Griffith in the 60s, and if you know anything about American cultural history or like political, or just, what was happening in the cities in the 60s, it's not hard to see why. People had had quite enough of the Cultural Revolution, and they wanted entertainment products that had nothing to do with that. And no, that's not really right. They wanted entertainment products that were well, let's just say it, they were reactionary. This was a reactionary kind of entertainment. It was explicitly reactionary. And that was one of the big complaints about it, that this doesn't represent what's actually going on in America. Well, yeah, it represents a contrary vision of society and politics.
Place what you just said at a time period.
All right, so like TV really, like Mark said, a lot of people think a lot of the stuff that got purged was older than it actually was, and it wasn't. Like in the 50s, westerns were still big. There were still shows that took place in cities, but it was kind of, I'd say stuff in the 50s was just like a lot more suburban than either urban or rural. And then the rural stuff starts to really kind of kick off in the 60s when sort of like the Cold War is heating up. You have your various forms of social unrest and change, and TV is, up until very, very, very recently, TV was always kind of reactive to culture just because of the lead time process that sort of goes into it. And so in the 60s, there starts to become a demand for stuff that's like a little more, I'll just say idyllic. And for a lot of people, idyllic still meant being outside the city. And so all of the shows that you sort of just named, Andy Griffith and everything like that, that's all happening through like the mid through late 60s.
I got so Wikipedia places the beginning of this stuff, and of course you could tell this is off base because this says ABC in 57 starts Real McCoys, and that is like AD0.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind is just like all these westerns were extremely popular. You have to keep in mind as we start talking about all this that we're talking about shows that were pulling like 35% shares of like audiences in the 50s and 60s. So you still have like a plurality of people watching westerns and everything, and they were extremely popular and thus making lots of money at the time.
Mm-hmm. And this is CBS was being by 66. It says, well, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, but so just by 66, CBS is being joked about as the country broadcasting system, and it's making them tons of money. It says they're highly rated. They can't produce enough, and just CBS has Andy Griffith. The list I think I just read that Andy Griffith, Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, Lassie, Petticoat Junction, and Hee Haw.
So let me lay out a theory, and Hellbilly, I'll ask if you agree with this. So if we were going to define the Rural Purge, put it down in the simplest way for somebody who doesn't know anything about it. In the late 50s and early 60s, there was this wave of entertainment programming that was very popular, that people desired. It was something that people wanted, and it ran directly counter to the social mores of the people who were writing and producing television programs and running the country. It was definitionally a reactionary movement is a bad phrase for it, because it wasn't something that people sat around and said like, okay, here's what we're going to do. In fact, the people who got rid of these TV shows, they were doing that. They were explicitly trying to change people's views by canceling these television shows.
Whoa, were they? I mean, you really, well, that's a good place to start the pot.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil things yet by saying yes or no as to Merrick's theory, but I'm going to kind of walk through the steps that happened for this to happen, and the yes or no is going to become quite clear by the end of it.
All right, I like it.
Because I'll be honest, at this point right now in the podcast, I'm 50-50, and I'd say I'm mostly 50-50 just because well, these executives definitely they saw the money signs for so many years, and I have, before we started doing our X Files review show, uh, available on the Patreon. Um, I always assumed that television executives were just like I would just place in my mind like, okay, just like scumbag, awful, any kind of bad decision that didn't come from the beautiful people with that have 8x10 glossies and sign autographs and walk the red carpet and stuff. Those people are all awesome, creative people, and these nasty executives, chewing cigars, sitting around, these the smoky room were horrible people, and but didn't know. I mean, going through the X Files podcast, most of the decisions stepped in by television executives there, and I'm not saying like television executives are good people, but I did think television executives were bad people. It's dumb to think well, cops are good people. Nah, cops are people. But just getting to the level of television executives are people that are just as capable of good decisions, bad decisions as anybody else. That was a step there. So I'm 50-50 whether this was uh at this point. So hopefully we'll be able to tell that over the course of this podcast.
Hell yeah. All right, so first I'm going to lay out some like autistic television business stuff because it's going to provide some important context as to how TV works, especially in this particular point in time.
That's why you're here.
Yep.
I
Senior
guess
entertainment correspondent.
Yeah, he actually knows stuff about the subject. So yeah, it's always nice to have one of those guys.
so we'd have to, if we're doing material analysis, I'm guessing you're about to start with they didn't have whatever the Nielsen rating, whatever the rating system.
So they did actually.
Okay.
It was like a voluntary survey you had to send back, but I mentioned before that like those Westerns were pulling a 35 share, which means like 35% of people were writing in to a company to tell them, yes, we are watching Gunsmoke every damn day, and sent by mail. So just imagine how much more popular it is, factoring the people that didn't send in their Gunsmoke ballots. But so at this time you have sort of like the big three networks: ABC, CBS, NBC. And
we're before cable. Everyone's watching all this on Rabbit Ears.
We're a little before cable. So like 50s and 60s, we don't quite have cable yet. Cable, you don't really start to see until like early 70s or so. And because of that, you have either a local network that's owned by the station, or you have an affiliate, which is basically an independent station that's contracted with one of the big three to carry their programming. And there's FCC limits as to how many stations a network can own in a given market, just to, keep ABC from, buying every network in the South, and the South only gets ABC programming.
Can I pause you here and have you explain something I've always wondered about? So I heard about this thing, and this is kind of how Ted Turner got going, but there was this so I don't really know how they worked, but I know in country music, a lot of it was controlled through these like super radio stations. And I've heard there's a TV equivalent. So in radio, there was like there was one in Louisiana, there was one in Atlanta and stuff like that. And I guess you could hear it for hundreds of miles. Maybe there's repeaters. I don't know. But I heard there was something like this with early like Rabbit Ear TVs.
Yeah. So like the whole reason why like Ted Turner was as successful as he was is because he was kind of like the first person to take like a local station in Georgia and, broadcast it, countrywide. So this is kind of similar to that, where it's like you might have like an actual, NBC station that sort of serves like the region, but then you might have like WGOB, down in Florida that sort of carries the same content on like a contract with NBC. And
This is like
what?
rabbit ears through like
Yeah,
repeaters or
yeah,
something.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And one of the key differentiators is if you're an independent station, some of your broadcast time you own. So it's not like you're going to follow like the NBC owned stations, play out like every second of the day. It's like, okay, from this time to this time, you the affiliate can kind of air whatever you want. And so around and also one other thing to kind of cover is syndication. So there's actually two kinds of syndication. There's the one that you're probably thinking of, which is called off-network syndication, which is where a show that aired on one network gets licensed and sold to another network. So
Seinfeld reruns, right?
exactly. They aired on the NBC, and now they can air on Fox or Comedy Central or wherever else because they've cut a deal with NBC to air this programming that they produce on like another station. Then the other kind is first run syndication, where the show is actually produced independently and then sold to a network to air new. So this is how most game shows work. So things like Jeopardy is first run syndication, where like you're always going to be seeing a new episode, but it's kind of produced independent of like a owning station. But also in the 50s and 60s, a lot of shows like Lassie were also first run syndication, where they're being produced independently and then just sold to a local or regional network to sort of air for the first time. So the reason why I explained all this is because you have a law that gets passed in, guess what year?
1972.
71. You're very, very close.
What happened in 1971?
If you don't listen to a lot of Good Old Boys, there's something we talk about this a lot. There's a website called WTF happened in 1971. I recommend everybody go look on that, and you can see like basically every single metric you can possibly think of, like every metric. There's a horrible disturbance in the force in 1971.
It might be this. So 1971, you have a regulation passed by the FCC called PTAR, where broadcast networks had to give back the 7:30 to 8 p.m. time slot and the 10:30 to 11 p.m. time slot back to the affiliates. And there was stipulations that they couldn't air network programming during this, so they couldn't just kind of take whatever show was going to air there from the network and put it in there. It had to be something that was either informative or family friendly. Big open-ended definition there. And that is kind of where a lot of sort of those first run syndicated shows, game shows, and variety stuff kind of started getting slotted into. Now, kind of talking about, WTF happened in 1971. February 23rd, 1971. The cast of Hee Haw doing their sing along, end of the episode. We'll see you there next week, right here on Hee Haw. Guess what happened next week?
They got canceled.
Nothing, never aired again. So all the shows that you named, Mayberry RFD, Andy Griffith Show, Payco Junction, Gomer Pyle, gone. People tuned in the next week, and All in the Family starts launching into their theme song. So February 23, 1971, all these shows just go off the air en masse. Where it's not like, seasons ended or, things got, just stalled out on negotiations. Just
execute Order 66.
Exactly. No, they just Order 66, everything with the tree in it, as they said, just disappeared from the networks overnight.
By the way, I love Hee Haw. And not ironically, and I know if people, there used to be a common joke on TV stuff, make fun of Hee Haw or whatever. There's some people just Go on YouTube, type in like hee haw Roy Clark. Do that.
Yeah. I just yeah. Well,
Yeah, but Merrick was sending me this like literally before the show started.
yeah. When he did old Joe Clark on Hee Haw, that's a great one.
Well, yeah, but he's also like, I mean, the most disgusting musician like you've ever seen. He even a lot of the clips of him going around, like they brought him, like they would, after the Rural Purge, they would like write in stuff like where Three's Company meets Roy Clark on the show or whatever, and just so they could stick in like 5-10 minutes of Roy Clark doing Roy Clark things. But yeah, but anyways, he all was amazing. If you grew up in the South.
So the primetime access rule, it allowed shows like Hee Haw to continue on, right?
Yeah. So also, Merrick, just another thing from before you said I want to point at Bog Beef. Look up Paul Henning and just look at these shows that he produced and created. Like this guy was just unstoppable streak of rural programming. Did Beverly Hillbillies, Payco Junction, Green Acres, all written by like one guy.
Yeah, Payco Junction. Did he also do the Real McCoys?
I don't. Yes, he did.
Yeah, it's a pretty much everything that was set in like the rural South in the '60s. This guy from Independence, Missouri. I had a comment about him, but I'll have to tell you that off the air because it would definitely get us kicked off of Patreon. So, the last of his kind.
Hang on, Merrick. Roy Clark is from basically Farmville, Virginia.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet. Go ahead.
All right, so let's start going down reasons of why they did this. Again, just kind of like middle of the night, just execution of all the role programming off of network TV. So the biggest excuse that you'll kind of hear for it, that we can kind of talk about first is
it better be money. We're Americans. This is America, and like if you're having this is how Americans are. This is something you don't really know as an American until you talk to people from other countries, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, that's how we are." Like no matter what your reasons are, your number one excuse better be money. And so go ahead.
Yeah. So the one is that it was a conscious shift in these sort of jobs and families that were being portrayed in sitcoms, because by including more characters from like a white collar or urban background, you were advertising to people that had more money.
The yuppies.
Yeah. So the shows that sort of replaced it immediately after Rural Purge was just the list here: Mary Tyler Moore Show, Brady Bunch. So Dad is an architect. MASH, All in the Family, Jeffersons, Kojak, and Good Times. So yeah.
The whole yuppie thing is funny because I mean, like now, of course, I mean, probably more than half the people listening to this show would be considered a yuppie by those standards. But like, if you're trying to be a yuppie, then I mean, this is when like, New York is just like a smear of rust and grime, and you know what I mean. Like big fat guys in
Madison Avenue and.
Yeah, big fat guys in wife beaters with broke down cars outside and stuff like that. So yuppies were becoming a thing, but it wasn't. I don't know. It was a different time.
Well, you had two things happen. You had the baby boom, and then you had a huge influx of wealth. So yeah, you did have this cadre of people who were young and had a lot of disposable income. However, I'll go into this later. I don't believe that, but yes, that was their excuse.
But
Yeah,
also,
yeah, dive into it now. I mean, let's kind of take these like one at a time. So yeah,
The excuse that like, well, this is purely a marketing thing. We want a better demographic, one that spends more money. If that was really the reason, that would have just been the reason that they said. You wouldn't have heard anything about how, well, everybody's making fun of our network. And everybody's making fun of our network for being the hillbilly network, and all the executives hate the shows that are the most popular television show on their network and stuff. That stuff is like the that's one of those things where you can see the actual motive peeking through the bullshit of the stated motive. You don't bring any of that up if it's just purely a money thing. Like Westerns are a great example, because Westerns, I think, legitimately did disappear because of they stopped being as good of a moneymaker as they used to, because you didn't really hear this stuff like, oh yeah, well Steve McQueen was a really big draw, and what was he, Wanted Dead or Alive. But we got tired of being the Wanted Dead or Alive network, so we had to get rid of it. No, it's just that stopped being popular. If it was just that, we would have not had any. There wouldn't even be a Rural Purge as a meme. It would have just been, okay, well, people aren't watching this anymore.
People are just tired. Yeah, you kind of tapped into sort of what my rebuttal of it was going to be, is that all these shows were, again, just outstandingly popular. Like, we talk about how, shows today would kind of kill to have X-Files numbers on broadcast, but like they would have done anything for like the sheer popularity that all these shows had through that time. Like for like literally just a 10-year streak where like 4 of the top 5 like top performing shows across all networks were all Beverly Hillbillies or like very real shows like that. And again, as I said in like our first X-Files podcast, like the purpose of television is to air advertising to as many people as possible. So it doesn't make sense that if you had something that 2/3 of the country was tuning into on like a regular basis, that I would be very surprised if they thought that there was a larger market share that they were somehow missing out on, that they could capture by getting rid of an entire genre of entertainment entirely. It wasn't like they just kind of like faded away, kind of like Westerns, which I think were very much like a immediate post-war kind of phenomena, to just shows that were in many ways like a sort of response to more political and topical fare, like Laugh-In or anything else that was kind of airing in the 60s at that time.
Oh, by the way, there's a little mention on the Wikipedia for Rural Purge that just sort of throws something out there. That's like, oh my God, we really sinned against God here. Martial artist Bruce Lee attempted to pitch a Western, was told the Western idea was out. Holy S, that would have been the most badass thing.
I mean, you got Kung Fu eventually, but yeah, not with Bruce Lee.
Oh my God, that would have been wonderful. But anyways, okay, so the weird part is this. White people, so like there are people, so like the hee haw audience, I don't know what it was like outside the South, but you could have ran hee haw like whenever. I don't really see that as following the same trends, because there's people in the South, and hee haw was like Southern culture to a lot. Maybe it was something different elsewhere. But anyways, but these other shows like White Flight, like white people didn't really leave the cities until the early 70s, right? I mean, there were like, so these shows were popular. It's not like all the white people were already living rural. I mean, living in the suburbs and more rural, and without the population density outside the cities.
It started at the same time these shows became popular. It started in the late 50s, and it got, hot in the 60s at exactly the same time that these shows were
I mean,
popular.
this is literally what the premise of Green Acres was, is like this rich guy moving out of
Yeah.
New York City.
with his hot Slavic wife.
Yeah, in the Vice City, they have ads with Burt Reynolds where he's advertising a condo complex, and he says, without the uninvited diversity of the big city, that's the reason why you move to these luxury condos. But I mean, I saw there were still like big busing decisions and stuff that happening in 71.
Yeah. But I mean, these things are happening at the same time, and it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that people started like you hit something. You're talking about Hee Haw was. We're old enough to remember like the very, very latest edge of Hee Haw, like the end days of it when it was on TNN and stuff. But like if you were watching Hee Haw in 1970, yeah, you weren't necessarily in the South. You could be anywhere in the country. People everywhere watched this stuff, and that was the problem. That's what they didn't like.
Yeah, and the perfect segue to something that Kai talked about in the chat a couple days before this, where it's like this is where you start to get like the flattening of Southern culture. It's where you know, like you say, like everyone everywhere is watching this, and it's not portraying, you know, something that's, you know, specifically Texan or specifically Appalachian. It's just like, no, it's where you start to get the just umbrella of rural signifier as like a cultural appeal.
Here's a quote. Robert Wood, an incoming president of CBS, pressured Dan to cancel the rural programs. Dan was forced out shortly after his response to Wood. Just because the people who buy refrigerators are between 26 and 35 and live in Scarsdale, you should not beam your programming only at them. Okay, I read that backwards. I was like, oh, people in Scarsdale are watching Hee Haw? No, he's saying that Scarsdale was Yuppie Town, right?
Yes, and it should be noted that the guy who forced him out and Fred Silver, they tried to get rid of Gunsmoke too. They wanted to get rid of it, but it was so popular, and apparently somebody's wife at the network liked the show, so they didn't want to cancel it. Otherwise, they would have gotten rid of Gunsmoke.
Yeah, I think it was like that, and like the Virginian or something like kind of got passed because it was like literally just the favorite show of like one of the network execs' wives.
And I want to say, you're going to hear during this podcast, quoting stuff that's like, what would usually be surface level references. And there's a reason for that. This was, of all the things we've ever talked about, this was by far for me the hardest to find any information about. Every time I would try to track down stuff, it would be like 404 dead links. And it's very rare, and it was kind of always incidental things. Like there was a William and Mary socioeconomic like a newsletter that had like some information about it. I have not seen any like treatment of this that's not just like here. I'm a person who used to like Green Acres. Let's talk about the Rural Purge. It's the strangest thing in the world. You would think this would be like a hotly debated topic and something that came up a lot, but it's not. It's crazy.
I saw exactly one book on it, and it was out of print and cost $150.
The Camp of the Saints here. And to me, that's always really suspicious. That means that something happened and they were embarrassed about it. And like, let me lay out my theory about that. And it's barely even a theory because you can see their fingerprints on this and they kind of admit it. For example, Museum of Broadcast Communications apparently has a whole Rural Purge either section or I don't know, whatever. I've never been there, and I couldn't find an actual copy of their I don't know, whatever this is, their thing. But you can here's an excerpt from it. By the late 60s, many viewers, especially young ones, were rejecting rural-themed television shows as irrelevant to modern times. Mayberry's total isolation from contemporary problems was part of its appeal, but more than a decade of media coverage of the civil rights movement had brought about a change in the popular image of the small southern town. CBS executives, afraid of losing the lucrative youth demographic, purged their schedule of hit shows that were drawing huge but older skewing audiences. Now, you can take that last sentence at face value if you want, but you shouldn't, because what they're really saying is, okay, there were all these television shows that were, and they don't say this, but they were created in response to these social movements, this cultural revolution that was happening. They were reactionary visions of America. They're like, hey, you don't have to live like this. Imagine how cool life would be if these people weren't constantly trying to destroy everything around you. And by the 60s, late 60s, it became clear that a lot of people really liked that. And you're not allowed to have a contrary vision of the world. Libs do not tolerate that ever. They just can't. They simply cannot allow it. So they had to destroy it. And this is this Museum of Broadcast Communications is doing this like this funny little lie. Okay, but the problem was the southern small town has had a change in popular image. Well, no, it didn't, because people loved watching these television shows. Well, the problem for you is that the popular image of the small southern town was still good, and you needed to destroy that.
You skipped the part there that sort of completed the picture for me, because I maybe I have a little more base desires, but so I didn't really get that, because I don't. Whenever I sit down and watch TV or whatever, that's not what's on my mind. But they said they gave it as an example. Gomer Pyle, USMC, was set on a U.S. Marine base during 1964 through 1969. But no one on the show ever mentioned the war in Vietnam. Now you're talking, because, this is something I was talking, I did this big Twitter post, got the biggest.
Gomer Pyle at the Mile High Massacre. Well, golly!
Where I posted like all these sort of socially conscious shows and all this kind of stuff. And like, when I come home tired from work or whatever, it's not like this show actually is going to deal with the hard hit. Like, I really don't want to, someone told me about this new show, Shogun or whatever. I'm just sitting there thinking, like, is it set like hundreds of years away from any of the bullshit problems that we're constantly dealing with in society? You flip on the TV, this guy's on fire. You flip on TV, the students are tearing up the protest. There's all this and stuff. If I wanted more, I got plenty of that, by the way. I got a show, I've talked about that stuff. I'd rather watch a show set in like 1600 Tokyo. Just get me away from this shit. And so, like, even if there was like a hidden, or not so much hidden, but like it's also displaying like a different, way to live and all this kind of sort of progressive stuff that's going on. And ask a progressive when was the glory days. They'll tell you like 1968. I mean, they were really having a lot of fun. I mean, they were it was hard to miss how much fun they were having. Well, the same thing, like all these progressive shows and stuff. Is there any? I always thought like, gosh, I'm just saying there's a little juice there, even for people that have no ideological things going into this. They're not like, well, I'm not going to watch I'm not going to watch Lassie until they know how they feel about the civil rights. But no, they just but they are interested in something that is far, far away from that. You know what I mean?
Well, Gomer Pyle can't talk about Vietnam because Gomer Pyle is doing a comedy, a family-friendly comedy. He can't really talk about Vietnam because it's not funny. Like that, you can't really do that. Of course, they did later get their wish. They got MASH, a TV show that just like spewed liberal propaganda at you, like looked into the camera, and Alan Alda just preached at you for like 15 minutes. And that works for them. They can do that, but it certainly wasn't family friendly. And by the way, I've never in my life, like something that I enjoyed when I was younger fell off for me as bad when I watched it again as an older man than MASH. when I was like 18, I would have told you like that was my favorite TV show in the world. I saw every episode of it. I watched that shit. I watched it again in the last couple of years. It was dog shit. That show was terrible. But I can see why they loved it. It was exactly what the doctor ordered for them. You get to preach about the Vietnam War to people, and it's, you know, you can have the bloody bodies and stuff. That's how they operate. They're allowed. They can do that. Gomer Pyle can't do that. He can't make a joke out of Vietnam.
Well, yeah. Well, I was just to say the past year or so, I've watched a lot of stuff I liked as a kid. I watched some Dukes of Hazzard. I really liked my two favorite shows. I think the three shows I remember as a kid I really liked was Dukes of Hazzard, Miami Vice, and Knight Rider. I haven't watched any Knight Rider again. I don't know if that would hold up or the A-Team, but the Miami Vice and Dukes of Hazzard, I liked it just as much now. I thought it was like, this is fantastic.
Yeah, Miami. I rewatched Miami Vice not that long ago, or part of it, and yeah, it was good.
Yeah, and I'm going to put the whole, you know, advertising demographic thing to bed with just like one observation as someone that, like, you know, works adjacent to television advertising. One of the things that they kind of credit, you know, doing this purge show is that, you know, the whole Nielsen system sort of improved, and you could kind of see more specifically, you know, what people were watching your shows. And broadcast television then, you know, very much in the same way as it is now, kind of skews towards an older audience. It always has, it always will. It's something that they, you know, haven't ever figured out how to solve. And, you know, with the response to that, I don't think is necessary. You know, I feel like if you watch like the commercials for Fox News, what are they advertising? It's all, you know,
Old people stuff.
Reverse mortgages and health stuff. Like you advertising, I think, tends to go to the audience, not the other way around. So I you know, like Merrick, I do not buy this explanation at all that, oh, we just need to get rid of all these shows so we can attract a more lucrative customer base.
You know, it's. I'm sorry. I hate to read from the wiki again, but keep in mind, like,
again, like we said, there's nothing written on this.
That and like this is you're getting their version of this story. Like Wikipedia now is the people who edit it. Like, they are not on our side. They're not hee-haw fans. What I'm about to read to you was not like a dissonant Andy Griffith enjoyer. It was somebody who agrees with their position.
Changing your Twitter name.
Yeah, dissident Andy Griffith enjoyer. So several conservative members of Congress, as well as President Richard Nixon and members of the administration, expressed displeasure at some of the replacement shows. I've read Haldeman's diaries, Nixon's assistant, and I remember this. Like he kept this like really detailed diary of everything that happened when Nixon was president, which in retrospect might not have been the best idea. But I remember this. I remember him writing about this. Nixon was pissed because they took off all these shows and replaced it with stuff like All in the Family. So the backlash and approach prompted CBS to commission a rural family drama called The Waltons. They didn't want to do this, right? The network scheduled it in what it thought would be a death slot against popular series The Flip Wilson Show and The Mod Squad, allegedly hoping the show would underperform and head to a quick cancellation. It's like, Nixon's bitching. Let's just put this show on whatever, and we'll run it in the time slot that, you know, we'll run it in the Friday night death slot, and nobody will watch it. And we can say, hey, we tried. Instead, it became a huge hit. Everybody loved it, and the show went on for like 10 years, and it became, like, I think, if not the number one television show in the country for a while, it was up there. It's like, yeah, people still really wanted to watch this. There were a lot of young people who watched The Waltons, too. It's like, this is absolute horseshit, and even they can admit it now because they won. You don't really have to pretend anymore that it was a business decision because you won. You got exactly what you wanted. Hellbilly and I were talking. You know, aside from shows like, I guess, the backlash shows like the Dukes of Hazzard and stuff, it's certainly today. I don't know. We'll go to the 90s with the last time I really watched television. Like, how many like sitcoms or television shows were set in the South that weren't either urban or like, you know, like there were some black shows set in the South, but I don't think any like white people shows outside the cities existed afterwards. Like, what do we got? King of the Hill? Like the cartoon? Is that it?
Yeah, I think that might literally be like the last, you know, post, you know, modern era show set in the South
that didn't hate it. Yeah,
that didn't hate it.
Yeah, like Mike, pretty much basically off of, like, Mike Judge used his power and popularity to make a show that
about his childhood.
Yeah.
Fondly received. Yeah.
What I'm curious here is like, okay, so if Richard Nixon, who was, I mean, Richard Nixon was not the most powerful president and the you know, the past 50 years. So he, you know, I think the Democrats had the Senate, the House, they had everything else. Nixon obviously was under scandal. So he
wasn't yet.
Oh, well,
not when this happened.
Regardless, I mean, so he chipped in and had some kind of way to influence these television networks. That's pretty fascinating and would be outside the scope of this. But was he the only politician that ever chipped in? Because, you know, there were other people in politics too. You know what I'm saying?
I'm sure that. Well, I'm sure that there were, but the president of the United States is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, but I mean, well, there were other presidents. There were, you know, there were liberal presidents too. Around these, not the same time as Nixon, but right.
Well, Johnson was out in early '69, so I don't know. Just thinking about Johnson, do you think Johnson watched Hee-Haw? He might have. Just not, but historical circumstances of Democratic coalition. Yeah, he might have enjoyed Hee-Haw too.
So I just found a bombshell quote that's going to bring this all together. So this is from some of the reviews from the debut episode of Hee-Haw. You know, blah, 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 worried it would set the country back 25 years. Although, do you know who the first guests on Hee-Haw were?
What year?
Oh man, I don't have the year. 68.
Let's see.
Twiggy.
George Jones.
Hang on, one second. I'm double checking the date.
We owe it to our listeners to be accurate about.
Sorry, 69.
George Jones, Dolly Parton,
Loretta Lynn, and Charlie Pride.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, and again, like the review of this first episode was they would set the progress of the country back 25 years. But
kind of racism and sexism just can't be tolerated in television media.
The New York Times called Hee-Haw, quote, "the Spiro Agnew of the CBS lineup, the key to the heart of the silent majority." It's all one thing.
Yeah, it really is. This is why these lame excuses just. I might have bought them in the past, but like we're living through an era that's not dissimilar now. Like what I mean, really similar in this, and like stuff's been like, okay, I'll give an example. A rare television show that is made in the last 10 years that I actually watched. You remember there was a Punisher television show. Do you guys remember this?
Yeah.
Right. So like it's a Marvel television show. It was a spinoff of another show, I guess. But it follows the adventures of the Punisher, who's a ex-military vigilante who just murders criminals 24/7. That's all he does. They made this show and it was on Netflix, and it was really popular. People loved it. In fact, it was so popular the people who made the show got really scared because like cops started having the Punisher logo on their gear, and conservative people and especially white men really liked it. So like they sabotaged their own show in the second season and made it all about like how the Punisher takes down. I'm not joking. This like secret cabal of evil conservative Christians who, you know, whatever. And he's got a spunky female sidekick, and it was dog ass, and it got canceled. Like they intentionally killed their own show because it became too it became too popular. A, with people who they don't like, and B, the very idea of the show contradicts their religion, so they had to get rid of it. They still do this stuff, just not on the scale that they had to do in '71 because there was so much of it.
Oh my God. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, cause you know how it makes you wonder what that phone call looks like, because, so this was, this is pretty much everyone knows that this happened with Dirty Harry 2, Magnum Force. There was basically, someone got a phone call and said, you can't do it like this.
Same time period too, right?
Yeah. And you have, and of course this has happened, by the way, like in any time period ever, you can put a show on TV where like a badass guy goes around and beats up criminals and people will love it. That's just sort of like the force of, I kind of believe that. Now, from what I understand, they've done this again with a show called Reacher, and it's this big jack dude, and he goes around and beats up criminals. Now, what I've heard is that season 2, now he's got the female sidekick, all the stuff you were saying. And, you know, now he it's, you know, they get scared when this happens. Like, you're going to hate crime too much.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because like in the first season of The Punisher, they even have a storyline where this guy who was an ex-military, he wasn't, I don't know, I wouldn't say like explicitly a 4chan guy, but like he's a stand-in for that. And he's a terrorist, and, you know, he's somewhat sympathetic and stuff, but like it wasn't like they weren't making, you know, Dirty Harry 1. It wasn't this like crazy reactionary show. They even put those elements in the first one, but it wasn't enough because the wrong kind of people enjoyed the program. So you have to, like, they'll happily sacrifice a hit television show for that reason.
It's something they just can't seem to ever stop, because I'm about to read an extended synopsis of a Beverly Hillbillies episode. I just need you to imagine the phone call that would happen if you aired this episode, and why specifically they would hate it so much.
By the way, before you do that, did you notice they equated Hee Haw with Spyro Agnew?
Yes.
Highest ranking Greek United States politician.
I don't know if he wants to claim that one.
What do you mean?
Do you know what happened to him?
Yeah, but what do you mean? He just got kicked out with Nixon, right?
No.
Okay. I didn't, but okay.
All right. The South rises again. Granny becomes convinced that nearby Civil War film shows the real war, which she refuses to accept, ever ended. Granny, Jethro, and Ellie Mae drive around Los Angeles waving a Confederate flag. Mr. Drysdale, the banker, joins in, calling himself General Milburn Beauregard Nathan Bedford Stonewall Drysdale, and preparing to charge into battle before ultimately chickening out. Eventually, Granny shoots the actor playing Grant with a gun loaded full of cookies, and the episode ends with her and the actor drunkenly singing Dixie back at the Clampett's mansion.
Gigabait.
That's amazing.
And I think it kind of ties into everything you were talking about with the other shows before, where you are committing a cardinal sin if you do anything to kind of smooth over the divide between, you know, for lack of a better term, like rural and Yankee culture, let's say, because, you know, this is, you know, doing exactly that. And, you know, the moment there seems to be sort of any sort of consensus of, hey, everyone enjoys this, they feel the need to just kind of sabotage it and cancel the show.
Okay. So now we're getting closer to what probably happened. If I'm getting what you're saying, so something we hear about a lot. So you can now something people learn about in I think I got some of this in high school history or whatever. We're so Civil Rights Act. I don't really know all. The Civil Rights Act that we get is all like 68 through 72, blah blah blah. What we're told is that this at the same time, this was where people uh like Wallace at first, but then Nixon more successfully employs this new strategy, the Southern strategy, and he steals the Democrat voters, the white Southern Democrat voters to the Republican Party. A huge sort of reshuffling of the party system in the United States. What it sounds like to me, that what we're getting at here is that if I'm a major Democrat that has any kind of influence on the film industry, um, this sort of uh, white Southern identity, and it's literally just like it's like all this it's all the
Yeah, not even in a political sense, like literally just in a cultural and social sense. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, like if you look at the map of the Southern strategy, it's all the Confederate States. And it's like, okay, so literally like just these people seeing themselves as a specific thing, this sort of white Southern identity thing is aiding people like Nixon to beat Democrats. This is a problem. These people need to very quickly and soon forget about Dixie or anything where they could sort of see themselves as just a thing at all. Which is, I mean, if you're in the middle of the Civil Rights Act, you're watching that strategy. Everyone is sort of aware of this strategy of how powerful it is politically.
Well, if you Andy Griffith was asked about, in the early 70s, about, hey, why was your television show canceled that everybody loved? And Andy Griffith, who's a very Southern gentleman, very diplomatic in his response, said this, and this is the sanity. And he before he said it, he prefaced it with like, "I'm going to answer this in like the nicest way I can." The people who are in charge, and he said the powers that be, actually, the powers that be believe that small town America is dying. It's going to be gone. And that was part of what instigated this change. Now, I'm not Andy Griffith. I'm not as nice. I'm not going to be as nice about it. And I'm sure he didn't really think of it that way. What they are saying is we have to destroy, and small town America is not really accurate either. We have to destroy everything that's not living in the pod. We have to. This has to be stopped, because you had this political problem, which is that all of our social engineering has chased away a large portion of the base. They had just lost the election to Nixon. They were about to lose in even worse to him in 72. These people have to, first, you have to remove this thing that allows people to sympathize with them. But more importantly, you have to destroy this view of what life could be like if they weren't in charge of everything. Like, and specifically this vision of how good life could be, how peaceful things could be if you weren't constantly being besieged by progressive politics. And that's what was happening.
Signal an alternative.
Right. Because if there is an alternative, people will take it because they hate it. This has to be forced on them literally at gunpoint. It's not hyperbole. It was done literally at gunpoint. There are pictures of this happening. We've seen it. We know what happened. This had to be done. Now, what's funny to me about the Rural Purge is that even if you take people who don't really like that it happened, people who like those shows and like, I think this was a mistake, they can't understand what happened. And I don't mean like they're dumb or they don't understand. They can't. like kind of like a fish can't describe water to you or me, because that's just everything around the fish. I can't really describe oxygen, right? We can't describe air. It's all around us. We're swimming in it. We don't have any conception of what life is outside of it. Well, we are all in the post-Rural Purge fishbowl, and we have been for our entire lives. That's why when this subject comes up, you hear stuff like, well, these shows were out of touch with what was going on in the world. Well, no, they weren't. They weren't at all.
No, they were a direct response to what was going on.
Right, they were a direct response, but more importantly, this was the funny thing is that one accusation I remember hearing a long time ago when I was younger specifically about the Andy Griffith Show was like, well, it just wasn't realistic because here you are in the South and there's no civil rights protests, and specifically, everybody's white. Well, that's not unrealistic if you lived in a place like Mayberry. I grew up in a place, 30 years later that was in the same region as Mayberry. And yeah, everybody, it was extremely homogenous. Like everybody was there. It was like a white British Anglo or German person. That's just what it was. And that's not really a problem objectively, but it is a problem if you're making media and you don't like that, and you want to destroy people. You want to destroy those people, and you don't want their way of life to continue. And that's exactly what happened. That's what they were doing. That was the goal, and they'll kind of admit it. That we need stuff that's more relevant. We need All in the Family. We need dirty, disgusting stuff where, the mom's almost gets raped and they're robbed at gunpoint, and the daughter gets pregnant by a hippie who runs off, and all this stuff. This is all relevant to our way of life, and that has to be everything around you. If there's a moment you can step away from that, one thing they really love to call it is escapism, which is a really funny idea. Oh, Andy Griffith and Hee-Haw or whatever are escapism. Think about what that means if you utter that sentence. Escape from what? Escape to where? Well, escape from the problems of urban America in the 1960s to a place where you don't have those problems. That wasn't like a thing that it's not scientific. Sorry, that's not science fiction. That's not Heinlein or Gene Roddenberry. That was an option you could do. You could pack up your stuff like the Beverly Hillbillies did and leave, but in reverse. You leave LA and you go to like the Pacific Northwest, or you leave New York and go somewhere else. That was an option, and that was a problem for them. And obviously that's something that we can relate to a lot in the 2020s. We're seeing the same thing happen all over again. But they have total control over television and movies now, so they don't have to worry about this. Not only like they're encroaching on our stuff with what little bit of stuff we have set aside, they can encroach on it every single day.
So I now we're building a picture here. So civil rights comes out and sort of is a just from like any sort of becomes this new super powerful weapon in the legal sense and in everywhere. And so you have this reaction to it, which create, which if civil rights was sort of based around, even if I don't think blacks were like the primary, sort of beneficiary or whatever, just because there were, there's a lot fewer of them than let's say like women or whatever. Or the other things that happen with it, the massive, you just look at the massive changes that happen at things like a university or whatever. But so you have the civil rights revolution happens, then you have this sort of cutting edge reactionary movement of like, and it's not just like it's identity, it's political, it has its own music, it has its own TV shows, it has a feel, a look, an idealism, basically nationwide, of resistance to this that says, okay, well that's team A, civil rights, we're team B. And which, by the way, this wasn't the case before. No. Before, white people in the South voted Democrat, and there were, race was not like political party was not done by race until the Civil Rights Act. So then,
no, I mean,
what do you mean?
well, all the brothers voted for Republicans before.
But so
before
did
this.
so did a lot of Yankee white people and stuff.
Right. I mean that. Yes, but I mean this. I don't think that aspect actually changed. They reshuffled the voting blocks. But like at the end of the day, the people who were like, you know, progressive Republicans became progressive Democrats, and the
Right.
brothers switched from Republican to Democrat.
But that's what we're talking about, and that's not automatic, and that require and so like look at this. So what's Nixon wins the presidency because of white people in the South. He wins 86% of white people in the South, which was not automatic. That was something that like he went after, and he would not have expected to get as as this Republican guy, you know, before that. Now you could see this most clearly because in '76, Carter goes retro, and he gets George Wallace, and him and George Wallace tour the South, waving the Confederate flag everywhere. And what happens? Carter wins. And so at that point, you know, you can see the back and forth that this Southern white demographic is not only in play, but they see themselves as a block, as something. They have some kind of identity amongst each other, and they're also the kingmakers.
Yep, and perfect segue to what I'm calling part 2 of this episode. Because, you know, when we first started talking about this, like, you know, a couple months ago, sort of the place where any, you know, kind of coverage or writing about this stops is just like immediately after the purge. It's just like these shows went away and that was it. You know, we got a new TV meta, and, you know, that's the last we heard of it. But they didn't, and that's the part that's really interesting to me, because you get maybe like a year without like any of these shows on TV, and then they come back hard. Like,
would you say they rose again?
You might say that the South rose again. Yes.
It hasn't stopped. By the way, like if I don't have cable plugged up all my channels of all my parents too. Basically, all the people I know, we're all Southern white people, and we watch if we're watching TV,
Grit.
we watch Grit, and it's basically just it's all these the westerns and stuff.
And Me TV, yeah.
Yeah, so like, you know, just because the shows went away doesn't mean that, you know, viewing demographic did. And like you were saying, it's kind of starting to become its own cohesive social cultural force that, you know, needs its own brand of entertainment. So Hee Haw was only off the air for 8 months. And then it comes roaring back, partially because of that PTAR rule that I mentioned before. It basically right into that, you know, 7:30, 8 o'clock slot, they just started making new episodes of Hee Haw. It kind of came back, and that, you know, went on to run for 22 years after it came back from cancellation. And this is also when they started adding hymns into the course of the musical performances in Hee Haw. So, like, you know, and that's the shows that kind of take off, you know, maybe 2-3 years after the purge are Hee Haw, Waltons, as we mentioned, Little House on the Prairie becomes huge, and Dukes of Hazzard.
So, did you guys ever watch the Waltons? Did you guys ever watch the Waltons?
No,
I never did. No.
So I watched the Waltons, and I mean, in reruns. Obviously, I'm not that old, but the first season of the Waltons is really, really good, and it was when it really blew up because, like, it's about this. They're from like my region, like just across the mountain from us. There's a place you can go to, the place where the guy grew up, and they call it Walton Mountain. Anyway, they're living in a depression in Appalachia, and they have all the problems that people did at that time, and like you still, some of those problems are just permanent, and like it was. It was like it was so relevant to our lives in a way that nothing else on television was. It's kind of ironic. It was kind of like the reverse of the Rural Purge. Like, okay, now you've taken away everything on television that we can relate to, and what pops up next? A huge hit series. It's like, oh, this is, you know, I hate to say preaching, but like this is preaching to your choir. This is the stuff that you understand, and the thing about the Waltons was kind of a throwback, because you would have this, like every television show, every movie in general does have some kind of moral theme. And I know some people think that's not true. They're like, oh, not the stuff I watch. But like, if you think that you're not being inculcated with moral values when you're watching something, then you're the fish in the water and you just don't recognize what you're seeing. Like if you go back to these old shows like Andy Griffith was famous for this, and one of the critiques about it was, oh, it's cheesy and sentimental. But like Andy Griffith is teaching you a moral lesson, sometimes explicitly, almost looking at the camera. You know, he's teaching Opie how to be a good, upright Christian young man. This was like the real sin of these shows. This is the real problem, and they couldn't really get rid of that. And they did a pretty good job for our generation. It was harder and harder to find. I don't think there was no equivalent for us in popularity to a show like the Waltons, but they weren't able to strangle it completely. Everybody still needs something to like not just spread, but reinforce and teach young people about your values. And when I hear that Hee Haw was just straight up singing hymns, well, I guess they must have figured it out. Like the people who made Hee Haw must have been pretty woke to what was going on.
Yeah, they realized that, okay, you know, you're not going to let us be part of the greater, you know, creative community. So we need to kind of just, you know, take care of ourselves and come up with a product that we know reflects the people that are consuming it. And this kind of, you know, reminds me of how, yeah, it was on one of like the live shows a while back about when Bog mentioned, you know, why every artist at some point goes country. It's because it's the one market where the demand will always outstrip the supply.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you can indulge me for a second, you know, when I think about these shows that were purged, they all had this common theme, a common moral theme. People today, you'll hear them say that like television shows are more sophisticated now. There's a lot of anti-heroes and stuff like that, and it's not all black and white, it's gray. Like that was some kind of technological advancement, that people have become smarter and they don't have these religious ideas anymore. Like that's
that's even true. I mean, how much of like All in the Family was just sort of reciting progressive morality to Archie Bunker or whatever.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. This is the fish in the water thing. There are these, like, if you think about the last closest thing to monoculture that I can think of was the Game of Thrones TV show, right? That was really the last time I remember everybody talking about watching one thing. And like the whole conceit of his stories, and especially the show, is like this deep cynicism, and you know, everybody's evil to each other. It's all about power and stuff, which by itself, that's already a very like every relationship in life is really about power and how much you can assert over other people. That's already really progressive. But like the only common thing in the show was like any kind of restrictions on someone's sexual behavior is evil and wrong. You should never do that. You should not. Diversity is good. Obviously, it's good in and of itself. It's virtuous in essence. Like these things all became values that were preached to us in the 80s and 90s, and like when it was still done with it with enough, I guess, finesse that
Tact.
right tact that like you didn't just like, oh my god, and turn it off directly, but like it was there. If you go back and watch the stuff that we saw in the 90s, it is pure unfiltered progressive propaganda. I guess I shouldn't say filtered, unfiltered. It was pure but filtered progressive propaganda. You can't escape this. It's in everything. Today I think we have approached like our own 1968 period in this, in colloquially they call it woke, and I hate that word because it's you're taking something that is genuinely powerful and giving it a silly name like it's a joke. It's not.
Yeah.
That stuff's not a joke at all, and like, it infects every aspect of your life. They want like if it was just like they give you this like people like Elon Musk will pretend that like woke people, they're like the church lady, stuff, these silly people who want to censor stuff, but like the church lady didn't really have any power by the time the church lady was a meme. She was fun, she was an object of ridicule because she was angry about these social forces, but she couldn't do anything about it. That's not the position those people are in. Those scolds, they do have power. They can get into anything they want. They can get into your little Warhammer figurines. They can change that. That's like the most autistic male based setting on the planet, and they wormed their way into it. And like, the weird gender goblins on Twitter are bragging about it. And they're right, because
they got Red Man Chewing Tobacco to change their name.
Yeah, exactly. They can do whatever they want. So like, we are in our own 68 moment. I guess the black pill here would be, it seems like that they're so much more powerful now that pretty much your only choice is to not even do what the hee-haw people did and like, okay, we'll go to syndication. You don't even have that option. You just got to make your own stuff, your own completely independent, outside of the realm of like television and movies. You got to just do it that way. The white pill is, because of technology, that's super easy, as listening to this podcast right now. Yeah, and that is why sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's the technology achievements. So, Bog was asking about cable earlier in the show, and one of the reasons why these shows were sort of able to come back was because of cable, where, you don't need, a strong, local network to like sustain a show, because you can pipe that show out now like across the country, and you don't need to succeed in like the market where you're making it to, really have it take off. And, kind of going back to the whole advertising and demographics things, it's like, if you're telling your customer base that, your money is not as good as, the coastal urban younger viewers, then, they're not just going to watch the new stuff. They're just going to find other stuff they like and give them, that same money.
Right. This is, and I totally agree. This is why, you should expect responses, expect backlash. Cause like, how could we use this information to sort of predict the future, what's going to happen next? So you can sort of see this, like yes, Nixon, won with Southern South, blah, blah, blah. But then look at what happens next, so you have,
the CIA made him resign.
Well, yeah, but you have, so Jimmy Carter courts the Southern voter. Ronald Reagan starts his campaign in the Deep South.
In Philadelphia, Mississippi. Yeah.
Right.
But that was a ballsy campaign move, wasn't it? I feel like if the Republican candidate goes like, I'm starting my rally off in Charlottesville, Virginia, let's go.
Well, I think I don't see like, and so okay, so
what do you mean you don't see?
No,
you know what happened there, right?
Yeah, but I could see that, like, so I'll link this, and then so I don't know much about George H.W., but Bill Clinton is even a better example, because Democrat, but he runs with another. Bill Clinton is Scots Irish and Southern. He runs with a Scots-Irish and Southern guy. Clinton courts the Southern vote. He asked to court the Southern vote for his wife. Because he saw for the past since 68 that these were the people that were crowning the president. George W. Bush. George W. Bush is not Southern Texan, any of that stuff. He's a super Yankee. His real accent is like a the Kennebunkport or whatever it is. That's not him, but he saw the writing that Clinton saw, that Reagan saw, that Carter saw. He goes after that. Trump, same thing. Biden is just kind of in there. And by the way, Barack Obama early in his campaign did sort of look into this. He ended up not doing that, but Barack Obama was definitely thinking about running a much more different campaign. So what would we expect looking at this from people that run for president, or and look at politics? What could we expect? I think you could strongly suspect that if you were a Democrat and you want to be the next president, you would be thinking, okay, we need a white guy is going to say a bunch of like anti-woke stuff, and you should say woke, and woke is the that is the one sort of team, and they will strongly pose themselves against it, and they will see that as their path to becoming president. I think what you could strongly see someone like the California guy, or more on the nose would be someone like Joe Manchin or something like that. That would see that as their path to presidency.
Just for the record, Howard Dean in the run up to the 2004 election, that was his campaign pitch. He goes, I want to get the guy with the Confederate flag in his truck window. I want to get him to vote for us. And that was one of the early things that made him a persona non grata.
Unpersoned.
He got, almost immediately. And fun, and it's funny. It's not funny because they probably would have. If they had taken his advice, they could have won 2004. But here's the thing, and this is the thing with 72 as well. From their perspective, maybe they didn't care because, they basically threw this 1972 election, but it's not like that weakened them. They became more powerful. I don't think that's a universal truth. Losing doesn't make you more powerful, but purging and making your purging your base and rearranging the electorate, it can be a way to go. But
regardless, Gavin Newsom wants to be president,
right? And you nailed something. Obama won. First of all, because there was a huge financial crisis, he might not have even won that election if not for that. And then, the second time around, he had incumbent advantage, and he ran against somebody that conservatives don't even like. And Hillary Clinton in 2008 saw that and said, "Oh, well, we don't need these people anymore. Don't shut up, Bill." Her campaign really, literally told him, "Stop. We don't want you to campaign for us. We don't want you to do this. We don't want these people to vote for us." He
literally requested to go to the South and pitch to conservative white people in the South.
Yeah, she said, and that they were that probably more than any election we've ever seen in our lifetimes. They said, "We don't want you to vote for us. We don't like you." And that massively backfired. And, in 2020, it's a very strange election.
Well, people get, just like in this story, people get feeling very big about themselves, but that only lasts for so long. And then you have people that want to win. And that's where you would see people like, because, no one's going to go tell Gavin Newsom, "Well, yeah, I know you'd like to be president, but, all these sort of larger factors for the greater movement." He don't give a shit about the greater movement. He wants to be president.
Well, the question is can they do that?
Could they Howard Dean him or something?
Could you? Well, I don't know that he's going to do that. Could there be another Bill Clinton? Could there be a guy that's going to pander to us? I don't know that there could be in the Democratic Party. I don't know that they could.
I don't think it's allowed.
I definitely think they could. I think you totally could. I think he's already. I think someone like Newsom has already started, but he isn't even an ideal candidate. But he's already started moving to the right in California.
That's not the same thing. That's not the same thing as pandering to us.
Well, anyways, I do think that just for the same reason of the other people may try to, there might be sort of larger forces that say like, oh, we'd prefer you to not do that. But if you're Gavin Newsom, you just want to be president. And so you're going to do whatever you think will put you in that chair. And that's sort of where like the revanchism comes from.
Maybe, but you're leaving out a step. Think about your governor. Well, you might have ideas of how you think that you should run for president or you run for office or whatever, but you don't get to make the call unless you're a gazillionaire. You have people who give you money that you have to listen to.
Oh, right, but we could look at this story that reality undulates. It goes and it comes back.
Sure.
And I think we'll see that here. Because remember, all these people sat around and sitting, chomping on the cigar and said, no more rural shows. F this, blah, blah, blah. And then, a few years later, you have, I love the Dukes of Hazzard. We should stop and talk about Dukes of Hazzard a second.
Well, the Dukes of Hazzard was interesting because it's not the same thing as Green Acres or whatever. It is like there were two, like it's like you had these two waves of of reaction, and the first one was like we're down home, peaceful, Southern, Andy Griffith, nothing bad ever happens. I got a gun, and I might have to put one bullet in it or whatever. By the time you hit the mid 70s and the Dukes of Hazzard is being pitched, that era is gone. Nobody believes
you're in the Turbo South. I mean, Lynyrd Skynyrd's debut album comes out in 1973.
Yeah,
hell yeah.
I mean, in terms of the identity stuff, literally, if you've Skynyrd and and Dukes of Hazzard are there like in the top 5 or whatever of creating Southern identity. I mean, part of the reason we see ourselves as Southern is some of the stuff that these people did. I've heard people, there's someone told me on Twitter, they're like, well, you like that Dukes of Hazzard. Well, that's fake. That was created by Hollywood and stuff. That's not really like actually real Southern culture or whatever. And that's hilarious if you actually are a Southern person, because like when they told me that the week before, they had brought and some of the actors, which to tour the South constantly and have done since the show came out. They had took the General Lee was in a small town near me, and I was going to go see it. It's a huge part of Southern identity.
Yeah, Cooter was in the House of Representatives in the county next to me, and he's got his own store there. And the General Lee and one of the Hazard County police cruisers sits out there every day. You can go by and you can go. They got like little cutouts of the Duke brothers. You can stick your head in. Yeah. And I mean, people can say whatever they want about that not being real Southern identity. Well, they're wrong. But that's not even what I was talking about. I'm saying these were two different waves of reaction. The first was, let's return to the peaceful and idyllic time before the libs were going insane and setting everything on fire. Nobody thinks that's even possible by 1975. That's over. That's done. That's okay. Now, what's the Southern show about? It's about these guys who are being constantly assailed by the authorities, and they are, in their cars, driving away from them, whipping out the bow and arrow and fighting back. That's a different beast than what you saw in Mayberry. Completely different.
Well, yeah, but it's they were moonshiners.
Okay.
Sounds sick.
Which was never discussed. I don't think they ever discussed that on the show, but it was obviously the implication. If you're older, which if you're a kid, you don't need to know that.
All right, but you understand what I'm getting at here, right? The people in Green Acres, the Andy Griffith. This is about people getting along, having peaceful, structured, ordered society.
Yeah,
that is the opposite of what the Dukes of Hazzard is about.
A universal desire versus something that is very specifically a reactionary rural.
An acknowledgement of where you are. The meme online, know what time it is. Well, you if you're watching Dukes of Hazzard, you knew what time it was. The political boss and the police, they hate you. They want to put you in jail. They don't like you. You're not like Andy Griffith was the police. He was the guy who was in charge. He was one of the town fathers. He was an important person. He was the anchor of society. The Dukes of Hazzard is the opposite of that. You're outlaws, and you might not want to be outlaws. In fact, as the song says, you didn't do anything wrong. This is not your fault. You're just trying to live your life, and you are, by virtue of who you are, an outlaw, and you're going to be hounded by authority, and you have to deal with it.
But also, right, that would be like sort of
I think it was very unsubtle. I don't think that was a coincidence that they just said, "Oh, here's a show about these outlaws who are good guys." No, it's because that's where you're at in life. In 1975, if you're a Southern person in a small town,
right? So you're talking about like Gunsmoke. You just get these sort of stories about justice and high morals and stuff. Later on, you have Dirty Harry. Dirty Harry is that person, but he's thrust into the modern world, where he's, constantly in trouble with the mayor, blah, blah, blah. But, also you just have the pre and post, like the before the role, like Andy Griffith show, they didn't know what was going to make of this. They didn't know, like, because of the Andy Griffith show, because of those things, that gets thrown into reality. And now all of a sudden, 10 years later, people are like, okay, whoever's going to be president is whoever gets the Andy Griffith viewers. Now this gets, it gets machined in, and it gets worked in. Whereas it was just more innocent of Andy Griffith. By the time you have later on, it's like, this Southern white identity thing is a powerful socio-political force. No one was thinking about that when they're making the other show.
You made a really good point, and I want to expand on it real fast. Like, okay, yeah, let's go through the history of television. The early days, you got Gunsmoke, which is not. I mean, it's just a Western. It's not about the South, but it's a Western. And what's the theme of Gunsmoke? It's impossible to miss. Here's a person. He's a lawman. He is sometimes the only law in town. He's the person. There's chaos, and he is the state of nature. And he is going to come there and he's going to create order. And by virtue of doing that, by creating order, he can create society. He is carving civilization out of nothing.
And you will get a non-subtle moral fable.
Right. And it was, and this is important because like you brought up the word innocent. Gunsmoke's not innocent at all. People get, they're not explicit about it, but women get raped on Gunsmoke. People are murdered. There are people who kill their own family members. They do all these horrible things. It's not innocent about human nature at all. But the moral of the show is that you have to create order out of chaos. You have to, this is an important thing. Law and order, justice, these things are all vitally important. You fast forward 10 years and now you're Andy Griffith. And Andy Griffith is an innocent show. It is a show about, okay, we've done all that. That happened 100 years ago, the Marshall Dillon stuff. We did create order out of chaos. Now we have this nice, beautiful, serene, ordered society. And here is a good man who's in charge of it, and he's keeping people straight. And sometimes he's got to very gently prod people into doing the right thing if they don't want to. And it also very unsubtle moral stories,
And an homage to the broken windows theory.
Yeah, yeah.
So I remember about that show is every single plot line is kicked off by the town drunk.
Yeah. R.I.P. Otis. Yeah. So you have it's very innocent. And what's the story what was Gunsmoke telling you about the time? It was telling you, okay, we're in this new world, the Cold War world. This is our role. We have to create order out of the chaos of the Second World War, blah blah blah. What's the moral of Andy Griffith? It's that we have this nice thing. Don't let other people destroy it by doing these crazy things. Look how good life could be. You hit 1975, 76, 77, whenever Dukes of Hazzard premieres. what's the story for our people? It's you are assailed at every angle. There once was a nice, orderly world. You can remember it. Uncle Jesse can remember it if you can.
You were left alone.
Yes, yes. And now all you're trying to do is fight to remain independent too. And the local political authorities, they're evil and corrupt. They're this greedy fat guy and the law enforcement are his lackeys, and they're just trying to play political games and put you in jail for stuff, and they blame you for crimes you didn't commit, and you just want to be left alone and do your own thing, but it gets harder and harder every year. Well, that's where they were, and they knew that. I don't even know what it would look like if you made a television show. Well, I do know what it would look like. It would look either like a very you would have to do some
early life check on Boss Hog, by the way.
If you were going to make a, what's the 2024 know what time it is show, if you were going to pitch one of these and then you couldn't do it because they wouldn't let you put it on TV, it would either be like, our version of, what's the crazy lady who wrote the stories about women being forced to bear people's children, Margaret Atwood. Yeah, yes. Yeah, it would be like you have to either do a Handmaid's Tale version or can I say Turner Diaries? Turner Diaries.
Ted Turner Diaries.
The Ted Turner. The Ted Turner Diaries. Yeah, like those would be the only options. Of course, it's not going to happen because you don't even have a place on television anymore. But I do think it's instructive that, like, in the course of like 20 years, you go from one to the other. But like, Andy Griffith and Dukes of Hazzard aren't very far apart.
Well, by the way,
it's not a coincidence that the Waltons has to be set in the distant past. That show's set in the 30s and it comes out in the 70s. That late 30s and early 40s. That's not a coincidence either. You had to do it that way.
By the way, I've watched Dukes of Hazzard within the very recent past. I didn't realize this. I looked it up, and so on the plot line is so it's based off Robin Hood, but the plot line literally the show begins. It says with them they're on probation for running moonshine. You were talking about the idyllic past. Now you're thinking
victimless crime.
You're thinking about there that that their car is like the biggest thing about the show, just about, and other than Daisy's Dukes, but the Charger is not a modern car during the show. During the time when the show premieres, 1979, I don't even think they make the Corvette anymore. All the cars suck ass. It's an old car. It's like a 10-year-old car at the point of the show comes out. This is going on by what you're saying.
I'll just say that the idea of running liquor seems hilariously antiquated to some people, but I don't know. If you're from a certain geographical location in the United States, revenuers and moonshine aren't like artifacts of the past. You can get moonshine today, and people talk about revenuers today. It's a thing. There are stills in the mountains. There are still stills in the mountains, especially in Appalachia. I don't know if that's a universal experience for the whole South, but like that is for us. It's still a thing. Not as much as it used to be, obviously, but it's still a thing.
I think this kind of thing is sort of, I don't know if it's universal in humans, but it's probably damn close to it. So, I mean, people in the South have, warm feelings, and those kind of Robin Hood sort of feelings about people who ran moonshine. You could think about lots of Italians feel that way about the mafia. You can see this in modern. I can't think that black guy that there was this rapper that got killed in L.A. just a couple of years ago, and he was a criminal. But like all the local black people felt like he was a they had these same sort of warm feelings. I think most cultures have this sort of aspect to it.
By the way, hey, if you're listening to this, don't investigate that thing I just said. I want to quote a great man. Once two strangers climbed up old Rocky Top looking for a moonshine still. Strangers ain't come down from Rocky Top. Reckon they never will. So yeah, don't do that. Don't investigate that.
Yeah,
Don't go looking
it's
for
not
the.
free for the taking.
I don't know. I'm. That's probably not true anymore. But I know that was still true in like my mom's lifetime. There were people who were legitimately killed over the moonshine trade. I'm like, we're talking 60s and 70s, not the 30s or whatever.
So I have direct family members that are and one of them is like literally in I don't know if it was the Guinness Book of World Records, but like a record holder for smuggling things.
Only the most aristocratic of Geo. You're only getting the best here from us.
I didn't even know about this when I was a kid. When I got my first job as a bellboy at Marriott, one of the employees there, they brought that up to me, and I looked it up, and
You're
wow, based.
People knew I have a direct family member, and he was like one of the biggest, guys doing this, like ever. And, I brought it up to people and they told me, yeah, but it was just something, you weren't supposed to, talk about.
I found out about this after my grandfather died. I was like, it was like, oh, he's really cool. He was all these stories about running from the cops, and he always had like the most like really nice new fast cars and stuff. And he drove a truck across the mountain. And after he died, I was talking about that. My mom, he's like, yeah, he ran moonshine, right? you realize like when he in the 40s and 30s he was running shine. That's why do you think he had a Buick and he ran from the police? What do you think, that was a coincidence? And I had no idea because it just wasn't even a thing anymore. But yeah.
And by the way, that person brought it up to me. It's the same thing as the show, or same thing as whatever that rapper is, or they thought it was super cool. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how it's just a thing.
Well, the whole
Harrison Ford in Star Wars.
Yeah, well, for one thing, like, the whiskey taxes always have been bullshit. Like, that was our first rebellion in the post, the United States, right? People don't want to be paying taxes on their damn whiskey. Like, that's what that S is all about. I mean, I don't know. That is really a victim. Like, well, I mean, I guess the United States government's the victim, but F those guys.
Exactly.
Cale Yarborough appeared on Dukes of Hazzard, who was like, he kind of completes the picture of in terms of Southern identity or whatever, which there's a new meme there's a new controversy going around this, but Cale Yarborough was one of the top NASCAR drivers, and he had arrests on his record for running shine, that was where NASCAR came out of. Because why would you race these like full size factory produced sedans, like in factory trim or whatever? Because that's what you would try to be low key. So you'd have these big, you wouldn't have, like, that was so weird. Why wouldn't they drive a sports car? That, a sports car would make more sense to go watch racing, but because that's not what you would run shine in. But yeah, Waylon Jennings narrated every episode too. But I think, what do you think? You think we've done our damage here today? I know everyone's asking for more X-Files.
I got one more treat for you guys.
Hell yeah, let's go.
All right, so I was looking for some stuff while things happened. I found the Nielsen sociogeological divisions that it uses to categorize their viewers, and I'm just going to read off a couple of these, and we can all have a chuckle. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Country squires.
Hell yeah.
No. This isn't you. Members of this segment fled the city life for the charms of small town living. Many have executive jobs and live in recently built homes.
Wow. That's super specific.
We have I know
Fredo, this country squire.
Yeah, I mean, I know someone that, like, literally one of our listeners will be listening to this right now, is overlooking his mountain,
packing the bags. We gotta go.
Yeah.
Mayberryville, living in small towns, this segment enjoys outdoor activities. They live an old-fashioned way of life and are below average in their use of technology.
Yeah, that's me.
Pickup patriarchs. They live in areas that are somewhat rural but have more of a suburban taste. They are frequent golfers, boaters, and shoppers.
Yes. Oh my God. These people, they're so far, like, I was trying to come up with a word for these people because this what kept happening over and over. Whenever we get in fights about urban, suburban, all this stuff, they would always make it sound like every single person that lives in suburbia or rural America is basically poor or whatever, or they're not sort of trying to get rich and all this kind of stuff. I was just thinking about, I couldn't think of the name. I would always try to come up with this stuff. I would just say like, oh, this is your vinyl siding business owner guy or whatever. Who,
pick up patriarch. You got it now.
Yeah, Nielsen segment 24 apparently is exactly that guy.
He's got a hot daughter named Shelby. He's got a boat. Yeah, the pickup patriarch, which we'd all aspire to be sometimes. Yeah.
All right, I got two more for you. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Country strong. These families live in rural areas that embrace their day-to-day lives. They are focused on their families and prefer hunting and country music to keeping up with the latest technology.
All right, hell yeah.
All right. And then the last one, perfect needle drop for this episode. Young and rustic. Composed of restless singles and young families in the nation's rural areas. They enjoy the outdoors and are big video gamers. 少年よ神